Let's go straight across now to Ahmad Naseem, who is the former foreign minister of Maldives, joining us for more on this. Mr. Naseem, appreciate your speaking with us here on WION. First up, if you can tell us if you have any knowledge of what the latest situation on the ground really is.
The situation in Maldives, in the capital Malé, is very tense. The military has surrounded the Supreme Court building, and they have broken the door into the Supreme Court, and they are the scenario is that there is electoral divided in the Supreme Court and the Chief Justice included. Any harm coming to any of them would be condemned by the people of Maldives. And this is a very serious situation that's evolving in Maldives, and it is dangerous that there is no solution to this. We urge all international friends of ours to help us in this situation and to see that we are back in the track of the Constitution of Maldives, and that the situation should be resolved calmly. Thank you.
So isn't there a huge question mark in which the government has carried on with clamping down on basic rights, in a way also compromising on the constitution of Maldives by first refusing to comply with the Supreme Court order and now storming into the Supreme Court complex? What precedent, what message do you think the government is sending out?
I think the government is very desperate because the government actually don't have the dictator regime do not have the support of the people, and so they are using few of their people. But that is enough in Malé to do this because already the state of emergency has been declared and these movements are restricted, so it is very difficult for people to gather in large numbers. But in any case, even if we gather, I think with arms and ammunition that they have, they can do whatever that is needed. The dictator Yamin is hell-bent on staying in power, and he does not respect the constitution, he does not respect the law, he does not respect the wishes of the people. And so we are in this situation. We need all the help that our neighbors, our friends can give us in resolving this issue.
All right, stay with me, Mr. Naseem. Hamid Ghafoor, spokesperson MDP, is also joining us over the phone line. So as we speak, there are forces breaking into the Supreme Court complex. Your initial reaction?
Well, I'm also watching this on television. They're saying that they have gone inside, but that's about all we can see. Well, we do not believe that, this is going on as it is going on. And I think everybody is struck with the speed with which this is developing. And there's a lot of people assembled in the party, in my party, that's the MDP. My party's center in Malé. And we are waiting to see how things develop. I am in Colombo, and I'm also in touch with the people in Malé.
Mr. Ghafoor, at this point, what intervention are you hopeful from the international community?
Well, the members of parliament of the coalition, they have sent out a statement appealing for international assistance because the parliament is also under siege and they wish to normalize their work.
Mr. Ghafoor, what help or what assistance do you see the Indian government, what are you hopeful of from the Indian government?
Well, we have been, I think, our authorities and our parliamentarians have been in touch with various organizations and governments, and India is one of the governments with which we are very closely, I think, talking to. And I believe that, if things go bad, and if there's no other way, perhaps, there may be situations where, I think this happened before when Indian troops came into the Maldives when Maldives was under siege. Well, this is an internal matter, and we are hoping that this can be resolved internally, but if we cannot handle the situation and it goes out of control, I believe a lot of people expect or think that Indian forces, because of the history, that India might come to the assistance. But we have no indication of any such thing.
All right. Mr. Kapoor, just hold that thought. If Mr. Naseem is still with us, or Ahmed Naseem is the former foreign minister of Maldives, and which is why I also want to ask him on the expectations, sir, that the government leader, the opposition leaders there are echoing. Do you perceive the international community, specifically India, working against time to bring about some relief to the citizens and those who've been sending out fervent appeals?
My hope is that regional countries will be concerned about the situation in the Maldives and take appropriate action to correct the measure that is going wrong at the moment. And we have been talking about it for many, many months and at least 4 years, and we have come to this situation now. So it's not late. Still we can solve this issue. I am a positive person, and I believe that with the help of our close neighbors and also the rest of the international community, the democratic world, would arise to help us in this situation and find a solution to this. Be it a negotiated settlement or be it an arrangement that the international community works out with the present dictator. We hope that some solution is, because in the end it is the poor people of the country. There are, Maldives may be a very high per capita country, but the money is not with the people. The people are quite poor. And it is there. It's them that are suffering in this situation like this. And when it goes on and the tourists stop arriving in the country, I think these are very big problems for Maldives. And to recover from a situation like this in a volatile industry like tourism, it takes a long time. And it is damaging to our economy, it is damaging to the average person who is making money through tourism-related activities. And so it's a sad situation, very, very sad situation, and it should be resolved in order to save Maldives and save the people of Maldives from this tyranny.
And what is also unfortunate here, indeed, is that citizens' rights are being compromised, are being clamped down upon only because the government of President Yameen refuses to comply with a Supreme Court order. We've seen escalating friction between the judiciary and the executive. Also getting that question across to Hamid Ghafoor, who's the spokesperson of the Maldives Democratic Party. So to your mind, the situation as it has transpired over the last few days, do you see President Yameen having his way over the next few days?
Unless there is sufficient pressure from the international community, President Yameen is proceed as he planned. He will certainly arrest a whole lot of people, and the country will go into chaos. And this is a dangerous situation that is developing today in Maldives, and we have to stop. And any effort from our friends in the world will be most welcome. That will be, the people of Maldives will be extremely grateful, I'm sure.
All right, just hold those thoughts there, please. Hamid Ghafoor and Ahmed Naseem, just a quick roundup for our viewers who might just be tuning in. We do have the latest information from Maldives, where the political turmoil has only worsened and escalated over the last few hours. In the latest, the police and the military personnel have stormed the Supreme Court complex. They are believed to be making their way inside as we speak. As we just heard our guest there also pointing out to the severity of the situation that we are talking about here. The president, Yamin, has of course refused to comply with the Supreme Court order to release the jailed political leaders, and which is why we see the situation where Maldives citizens are unable to really have their basic rights intact, because the president has refused to budge and remains firm on not releasing those jailed political leaders. Let's also get in further perspectives from WION senior foreign editor Padma Rao, who's joining us on the broadcast at this minute. Padma, your initial reaction to the way we've seen the situation only turning uglier over the last few hours. We now have the police storming the Supreme Court.
Yes, this was, but I think there was also a certain wait and watch in Mali on part of President Yamin to see what the international reaction is going to be. And so far, it hasn't gone beyond, it's been pretty muted. Various countries have been warning. Very few people would actually imagine a president of a country to be going this far as to entering the country's highest judicial instance and, trying to arrest his chief justice and the judges. So I think the situation has escalated now, and we have heard warning signs from the United States. India has taken a very guarded and measured position. We've heard from China as far as the travel advisory for its own citizens is concerned. But certainly some international action will have to be taken, and it will have to be a concerted international action thing to do, and not on a bilateral way, or not in a kind of the Indian Ocean should not see rivalries now. The Indian Ocean should see various nations and nation groups come together in such a way that it will benefit and protect the people of the Maldives, and not, and make sure that it doesn't escalate into some other dimension altogether.
Padma, with the benefit of hindsight, to what extent do we see the Indian government actually working against time to restore normalcy in Maldives? Do we see the Indian government reaching out anytime soon?
Well, the Indian government has made its displeasure felt in no uncertain terms. Prime Minister Modi dropped the Maldives. He has not visited the Maldives yet, and that is the only country in the region he has not visited. But on the other hand, there is a massive Chinese sprawl and an extent of Chinese influence in that area, as also influence of Saudi Arabia. Now, there are various, other factors involved. So India is not going to, rush in where angels fear to tread, so to speak. But having said that, I think tonight's, storming of the Supreme Court may turn the tables a little bit and may turn the tide of the Indian Ocean. And not only in the Indian Ocean, I think there is going to be a massive outpouring of anger and condemnation, and primarily, also from the United Nations, which has already spoken. But I think the action that we see in the coming days after this latest, unsavory and alarming development in the Maldives is likely to be much more decisive than it has been up to now.
Right. Stay with me, Padma. Just a quick update. Opposition protesters have now started gathering outside the Supreme Court after the state of emergency was declared and after the military personnel and the police teams stormed the Supreme Court there. Padma, the state of emergency certainly is not unprecedented. We've seen that happen earlier over the last 3 years as well. But to what extent is this friction between the judiciary and the executive unprecedented?
Well, it is unprecedented mostly because the Chief Justice of the Maldives himself was known to be a political appointee. He was handpicked by President Yamin himself, with whom he is now ironically at loggerheads. Not he, but the Supreme Court. And this had come as a huge surprise for many people because this was a Chief Justice who had been, told, sort of chided by many bar associations, including the one in India, to restore. He had sacked 19 lawyers, and he had taken some moves which were seen as moves that were instigated by President Yamin, and he was seen as a yes man. So to find the Chief Justice now on the other side of the fence and having been, bold enough to pass a judgment of this momentous nature, people are reading different things into it. People are saying that the Chief Justice did travel abroad, after he received the petition and before he delivered the judgment. There is a lot of speculation in the Maldives and the Maldivian media about where the Chief Justice may have gone, to which country. Might an outside country have, in this case, positively influenced him to maintain the balance and the equilibrium and the, and the fairness of the highest judicial instance and deliver a fair judgment, which is what he is seen to have done when he returned to the Maldives. So, yes, there is an element of surprise there, but that the judiciary and the government are facing off, well, we saw it coming under President Yamin. There has been another, gentleman who was ruled with an iron fist, that was President Maumoon Gayoom, who ruled the Maldives, was the longest-standing ruler, who ruled for 30 years, and he was also known, he had his stentorian ways. But we haven't seen something like this, an internal strife of this kind. We have seen the rebellion in when India went in to help with Operation Cactus, when there was a rebellion trying to overturn President Gayoom, the long-standing ruler. Held the rebellion and, killed, there were 19 rebels from Sri Lanka who were killed. So we've seen that kind of violence, but it was instigated at that time from the outside. So this kind of upheaval, I'm afraid anybody who's been watching the trajectory of President Yamin's government, it would seem that it was pretty much heading this way.
Pretty much heading this way. And stay with me, Padma. Let's also go back across to Ahmed Naseem, who is the former Foreign Minister of Maldives, who's still with us. Ahmed Naseem, to what extent, and as Padma, our foreign editor, was just indicating as well, are the recent developments yet again indicative of the iron fist control exercised by President Yamin? Here we have the citizens' basic rights being clamped down upon because the president and the government refuses to comply with the Supreme Court order. Ahmed Naseem?
The government... hello?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
It's very unclear. I can't... the government of Maldives, President Yamin's regime, has not been listening to the voice of the international community, has not been listening to the people of Maldives. And we have come to this situation now, and I believe that President Yamin is not going to budge. He will just carry on with what he is doing at the moment. And my hope is that there will be some openings where we can start talking to some people in the government at least. Many people have resigned from the government now, and there has been a very strong statement from the White House, National Security Council. So these are all encouraging signs, and we believe that India is working very carefully in the situation and monitoring what's going on, and India will act in the best interest of the people of Maldives.
All right, Ahmed Naseem, yes. Yes, go ahead.
I couldn't hear your question very clearly.
No, but sure, yes, but you have, yes, absolutely, but you have answered the operative portion there. Let me just also apprise our viewers that this is a big piece of breaking development that we have been tracking all along. The police and the military personnel, as we speak, have now stormed the Supreme Court there in Maldives. This just very close on the heels of the government and President Yamin refusing to comply with the Supreme Court order which sought the release and ordered the release of the jailed political leaders. President Yamin refusing to budge and going all out by imposing a state of emergency for the next 15 days. We have basic rights of citizens being clamped down upon there in Maldives, and in the latest twist in the political turmoil, which has only worsened, police teams and military personnel have now stormed the Supreme Court. Padma, if you're still with us, do you anticipate that over the next few hours, President Yameen has his way? To what extent do we see an interference? For example, we've had strong statements certainly coming in from all quarters of the international community. But to what extent do we see that strong criticism actually translating into concrete intervention?
See, Molly, the thing is that, the Maldives is a very, very small country. It's 1,000 islands. It's scattered over approximately 1,000 miles. And there are many, many, many uninhabited islands. But essentially, the capital, Male, is one island, which is barely, 2 by 2 square kilometers or something like that. And it's very tiny. As Eva Abdullah was saying earlier on, the MDP MP from Male, everybody knows everybody. So there is going to be a huge amount of public pressure on President Yameen as well. And of course, our co-speaker already mentioned the amount of international pressure that is building on him. Now, this will come, if this situation lasts for much longer without his eventually conceding defeat and stepping down, then there will be, things will start in the form of sanctions, in the form of international condemnation, and the things will take their usual route. Now, the essential thing right now for any country that is involved or is bound to get involved is to ensure that there is no violence and no bloodshed in the Maldives, because, earlier we were saying that the police and the army have stormed the Supreme Court. Now, don't forget that the judges of the Supreme Court are actually inside. They stayed there overnight because some of them had reportedly received death threats. Now, we have seen also a spate of very, mysterious killings in the Maldives. There have been, bloggers and anybody who criticized President Yameen has been either put away or has been mysteriously disappeared. There were murders. And also now we hear that President Maumoon Gayoom, the former president, the president who ruled for 30 years, that his house has also been surrounded by police and that he also faces imminent arrest. Now, don't forget, President Gayoom has joined hands with President Mohammed Nasheed, the democratically elected president who is in exile. And they have formed, they are the two, chief politicians who have managed to overcome their earlier extremely bitter differences of those years to come together and rally together and bring the entire opposition under one united flag, with the major effort being to ensure that President Yameen steps down. So that is a big support base to have. So it remains to be seen in a place like Male, how much longer can President Yameen hold out? And the longer he holds out, the question will also arise, Molly, as to who is giving him the confidence and the support. Who, or shall we ask, which country or which outside force? Now, these are questions to ask, and, again, I'd like to remind our viewers that, the two of the nations that President Yameen has allied himself to the closest are Saudi Arabia and China. So we don't know where he's drawing this confidence from. All we know and all we hope is that there is no bloodshed, and that also that the sections and the rifts and the fault lines among the police and the army, which sources have been telling us that there are indeed, that not all of them want to comply with going against the Supreme Court, that those rifts will, those chasms will, perhaps grow wider in the coming days.
Right. Ahmed Naseem, would you like to come in here and the points that Padma was just making, about to what extent are we looking at all these strong statements actually even yielding any outcome on ground?
Thank you. But before answering any of your questions, I must congratulate Padma for her knowledge in what's happening in Maldives. And the politics that has been evolving in the last 4-5 years. Padma, thank you so much. I really admire all of that. And it's very useful that someone in India is really taking note of what's going on in Maldives. Now, to your question, I don't know. I don't know if you say what you need to say, because every boundary that should not be crossed has been crossed by Yemen. And it is inevitable that people of great respect in Maldives, like President WION, who has now supported in Maldives, and also the Chief Justice for what he has been it is strong enough to advocate in the country. Now, these people are in trouble. Now, that is something that our present dictator, Yamin, should be really, really worried about. He can, in order to stay in power, he's doing everything without giving any consideration to the people of Maldives, or their wishes, or their desires, or the stability of the country, or the polarization, and also the possible outcome, nasty outcome that could happen in Maldives. And it is important for the international community to understand that this problem has to be resolved soon. And unless we resolve soon, there is not a lot that every person in Maldives will suffer. Thank you. And I think I have to go off now.
All right, appreciate very much your joining us here on WION with those perspectives. Just to remind our viewers, these are the latest images that we are getting to you from Maldives of police personnel in riot gear, with riot gear, and that's the kind of security that we are talking about, which is only amplified on ground. The police teams and the military personnel making their way as we speak into the Supreme Court complex. Reports also coming in that special operation team of Maldives is now trying to enter the home of Mehmoon Gayoom, the former president of Maldives, can be arrested. That's the latest that we are getting in at this point. Reports indicating that the former president could also be arrested. Does that surprise you in any way, Padma? All right, we've lost that line with Padma and Mr. Naseem. All right, Mr. Naseem, if you're still with us, would you like to comment on how, the possibility of Mr. Gayoom being arrested has been talked about ever since this turmoil broke out. So this certainly should not surprise many.
I think I have to go off now.
All right, sure.
I have so many things to answer to now at the moment. Yeah. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Naseem, for joining us. The Maldives former foreign minister, who's been sharing his perspectives on the situation there in Maldives, which has only turned uglier. The political turmoil there has only intensified. Now, as per the latest reports that we are getting in, opposition protesters have started gathering outside the Supreme Court complex, which, as we speak, and on your screens are images of the military personnel who are making their way into the Supreme Court complex. And we do expect the next few minutes or the next few hours to unfold rather violently, given the preparation that the military personnel have put in place, given the situation which continues to remain volatile after the government and the President Yamin have refused to comply with the Supreme Court order.